Colette, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here in this conversation today. As we were talking in the pre-show, we're all excited about talk about vaginas and sex today.
Oh my gosh, my two favorite things to talk about, vaginas and sex.
Yeah, before we came on, Colette was saying that she talks about vaginas every single day. So here we go. Yeah.
Well, we'll hop right into it. But before we do, we've noticed that you was named one of the trailblazing leaders by Women of Wearables in the 2023 list. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
On that.
I'm just thrilled to be with a bunch of women who are innovating in this space. When I started, oh gosh, 9 years ago, there weren't a lot of us, and now there are so many more Femtech leaders, and it's so exciting to see growth in women's health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. We're excited about what the Biden administration's $100 million will do for women's health. It sounds like a lot of money, but I know that's
Goes fast.
goes
It's
fast.
actually not a lot of money. Given how much we spend on all these other issues, 100 million is nothing, but hey, it's a start. And that's
Yeah.
what we need
Yeah.
is a start.
Exactly. Awareness, and it's a start. So, right, here we go.
Well, let's dive into it. We have a lot of our listeners who, when they see us, kind of go over to the side and say, hey, I'm having some vaginal dryness. I'm having some pain with sex. And they don't know what to do, or they're too embarrassed to talk about it. With us, it talks about vagina and sex all day long, right? But it would be great for our listeners to understand, like, what's really happening right now with menopause, and what are our vaginas experiencing, and what are some of the solutions that we can look at. I know we've said so many times to our listeners, don't sit in silence and suffer.
Exactly.
But there's some stuff happening down there that I don't think people really realize, and love to get your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, first, I want to start off by saying I am not a doctor. I am a entrepreneur that have been working in the space of menopausal health, specifically intimate wellness and vaginal health, for the past 10 years. So I like to think I'm a doctor, but let's be clear, I am not a doctor.
Fair. That's fair.
Although I do talk a lot about it. I also like to explain things in very layman terms so that the average person that doesn't have a medical background understands. So this is how I like best to explain it. So as we age and our body starts to transition from our childbearing years to our post-childbearing years, which is menopause, and that is related to a decline, a natural decline in the production of estrogen. And it can start as early as the 30s for some women. Typically, it's in your mid 40s. And by the time you're in your 50s, I think the average age is 51, but it could be your mid 50s. Your estrogen has been depleted to the point where you no longer have periods for a period of 12 months, which means you no longer can have babies. With that process, as we look at our vaginal health, two things that happen as part of that aging process. One, we lose collagen and elastin, and that is not just in our vagina, it's everywhere. And it's not just specifically related to menopause, it's related to age. But it happens coincidentally about the time we're going through menopause. And what that means is our skin becomes lax. It is no longer have that elasticity and that tightness that we once had as a younger woman. Additionally, our blood flow decreases. And when you think of blood flow, I'm not talking about periods, I'm talking about blood flow in our tissue. Because our tissue is thinning, the blood flow thins, and we lose what we call vascularization of the tissue. And so our tissue no longer has that healthy, rosy appearance. And so think of it this way. When you see a young child, notice that their cheeks are all plump and they're rosy and you just want to squeeze them, versus you unfortunately look at an 80-year-old woman and her skin is gray and sunken and she's got wrinkles and she looks older. Well, that's because she's lost collagen, elastin, and blood flow. So the same thing happens to our vaginal tissue. Even though we can't see it, it's happening. And when you lose collagen and elastin in your vaginal tissue, it becomes thin. It is no longer plump. And so when you have intercourse, guess what? It's looser. It doesn't feel as tight. So you lose that sensation you would normally have if you were a 20 or 30-year-old woman, because you're not feeling it the same way you did back then. Additionally, because it's plump and no longer plump and it's more lax, there's a lot of friction that occurs with penetrative intercourse. So imagine, and I'm going to get real direct here, ladies, you got a penis
Go for
inside
it.
of you, and that penis is rubbing, and the skin is loose. So what do you think happens? Chafing can happen, or rubbing that causes irritation and pain and inflammation, and even blood. You may bleed, and you're like, wait, what? I thought I was in menopause. I was no longer on my period, but all of a sudden you're bleeding. It could be because of that friction due to the penetrative intercourse. And then blood flow. It is correlated to the drop in estrogen, to the thinning of the tissue, to the loss of natural lubrication. And I can't quite explain the medical correlation, but when you lose estrogen, you become dry and blood flow is affected and you have dry tissue. Thus, you experience vaginal dryness. Vaginal dryness also leads to painful intercourse and discomfort. So all of these things happen as a result of us getting older and going through the perimenopause, menopause phase. So sex is no longer what it once was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's actually fascinating to me. That might sound really strange, but the vagina is actually fascinating to me. And who knew all of this, right? Until we move into that menopause space and we're like, oh, wait a minute, there's more to this than what I originally thought. And I think it's also important to note for our listeners, if they don't understand that you actually have your vagina, the vaginal wall, but you have the vestibule, which is the entrance to the vagina, right? You have your vulva, you have
You have
your
your
clitoris,
vulva, your labia.
many, many parts. And there are pelvic floor muscles that also contribute to this sexual arousal or painful sex, and the muscle memory if you've had painful sex, and it remembers it doesn't want the penis in there, so it goes into protective mode. It's like an onion, literally, that is being peeled back, right? There are so many things that we need to look at and consider. But I'm fascinated by what you do at JoyLux and the red light therapy in particular. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit more about that as a solution to some of the things that we've just mentioned. We need good
That's
news,
right.
right?
Well, unfortunately, I started the company JoyLux because when I looked at these problems that women were experiencing, there were not a lot of options to treat those. So let's just talk about some of the issues. So you've got the vaginal laxity, you've got the dryness. So what do you use? So historically, you've used lubricants, vaginal creams, hormone replacement therapy, things that can help with the tissue. But not everybody wants to do that. The protocol to do those, either you have to do them daily or wear patches or take drugs. So it's just not something that people have widely adopted, believe it or not. Less than 20% of women take HRT. Then you have incontinence, and incontinence happens because your muscles have, your pelvic floor muscles have weakened. But also, this is something that most people don't understand, is that your sphincter that controls the flow of urine is surrounded by collagen and elastin. So when you go through menopause and aging and you lose collagen and elastin, your sphincter becomes weaker. So you may have a really strong pelvic floor, that muscle may be really strong, but you don't have as much control over basically the gate that keeps the urine in and out. So how do we solve all these things? So what we did is look at a new form of technology they're called energy-based technologies. And it's about depositing photons of energy into the tissue at the dermis level to basically get your body to do create new collagen elastin, to increase blood flow, to basically take your body back to where it was. And an energy-based technology can be ultrasound, it could be lasers, it could be radio frequency. But in the case of Joylux, we use red light therapy.
Mm.
And red light therapy we love because it's incredibly safe. There's no known adverse events. It's been used widely on the body for rejuvenation of the facial tissue, other parts of the body. So what we've done is we applied this red light therapy internally in a device that looks a little bit or a lot like a dildo, but it's not. It's a device that treats the inside of your vaginal canal to rebuild that collagen elastin, to increase that blood flow. So all those things that we were just talking about can be changed, can be reversed.
That's amazing. So just so that we understand, you take the device and you insert it into your vagina like a dildo. And then how long do you leave it in the vagina? What's the treatment,
Yeah,
normal
so
treatment look
the
like?
treatment time is based, it's 10 minutes.
Okay.
And it feels very warm. It actually is very soothing. Most people just sit back and relax, watch TV. We have an app. You can read a women's health information on the app. But it's 10 minutes and you do it. The initial treatment or the initial therapy time is 10 minutes every other day. So 3 times a week for 6 to 8 weeks. And that's where, clinically speaking, we've demonstrated that women will see a noticeable improvement in their health and wellness. Whether, we may have one of the vaginal health issues, we may have all the vaginal health issues. Whatever you are suffering, control, dryness, you name it, this device will help. And we've validated it. It's been published in peer-reviewed medical journals. It's, I don't know, we call it the magic wand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
Wand.
I love that. Talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about your statistics though, because that's fascinating too. I know it's out on your website. You can look at the report that was published, I think 30,000 women
Yeah, we
treated.
surveyed more than 30,000 women who were going either in perimenopause or through menopause, postmenopausal, about their menopause symptoms, specifically their vaginal health, their intimate health, we like to call it. And then we followed 5,000 women for 2 years.
Mm.
So looked at that, how they've evolved, their health has changed over 2 years. And what we learned is that this is a major problem. It
Yeah.
is something like, I won't get all the numbers exactly correct, but something like over 60% of women experience vaginal dryness, over 50% experience incontinence, bladder leakage. So think about that. That's more than half the
Yeah. Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
And not surprising, but lifestyle factors play into the symptoms. So if you have higher BMIs, you're more likely to experience, incontinence. If you don't drink water, like if you drink less than your 8 glasses of water, you actually are going to experience more dryness. So there's some things that we reported on that seem common knowledge, but it was validated that, yeah, these things impact women. But I think the big story here is that you're not alone. With
Mhm.
talking to 30,000 plus women,
Yeah.
the majority of them experience pain with sex, incontinence, or vaginal dryness that is having an impact on their quality of life.
Yeah.
And that is really unfortunate, because if you're suffering, whether it's your confidence or you're embarrassed or you're afraid to talk about it with your partner, that impacts your daily life. It impacts relationships, it impacts whether or not you're active. So it's really important that as women embrace our intimate health and do something about it. Find something, whether it's Joylux or it's HRT or it's a doctor or pelvic floor therapist that can, help educate you and get your body healthy again. That's so important.
I love that you found a problem and did something about it.
Mhm.
I was thinking before our podcast today, I was cutting off the knees of my nylons before, all the compression nylons came out. And I'm like, how many billions of dollars would I have right now?
Exactly.
So I love that you did that. You mentioned pelvic floor physical therapy, which also seems to be sort of one of the solutions that is coming up right now a lot in this space. When would somebody want to try that? And when would you say that the home remedy that you've created would be a good option for people? Because I think that it's all pretty scary that something's going inside my
Yeah.
vagina, right? It feels
Yeah.
invasive. And I know that, personally, I know about dryness and incontinence, and trying to find the solution so that, you don't have to change your clothes after you have a good laugh with your
Right.
girlfriends, right? So
Mhm.
I'd love to get your thoughts on, like, everyone's experience is different. But where should you go if you're having
Yeah.
symptoms?
So pelvic floor therapy to me starts at an early age. And when I say therapy, I mean starting to do your Kegels, right? You
Mm.
should be doing your Kegels in your 20s and your 30s. If you haven't started by the time you're 40, they're not going to help. So you got to start them young. And that's primarily what pelvic floor therapy is. It's doing manipulation of the muscles using equipment that stimulates the nerves to involuntarily contract or to voluntarily contract. So it's all about building up that muscle strength that, of course, is important in helping incontinence. It's not going to help with dryness. It could help with pelvic pain, depending on, the root of your pelvic pain. But I think, you should definitely start earlier than later. Now, as we get into kind of what we're doing, which is about addressing tissue health, that's not necessarily needed until you are at the age where your tissue starts to become compromised. So either it's compromised because you had a life milestone, like went through childbirth, which tears the tissue and destroys the nerves and whatnot. Or as I mentioned, you start to go through menopause. That's when an energy-based technology could help the tissue health and not so we've got the muscles, and I know muscles are tissue, but you've got the muscles, and then you got the vaginal epithelium, that tissue. So start with the muscles, then move to modalities that treat the tissue.
And do you recommend some hormone replacement with it before
Absolutely.
it?
I'm a proponent of HRT. I take it myself. I take it not for vaginal health issues. I take it because it's good for heart health and
Mhm.
brain health as just taking a hormone out of your body suddenly isn't good. Your body's going to react. So I'm taking it to help maintain what my body is used to having.
Mhm.
When it comes to vaginal health, I'm using my VFit because it works and it works well. You can certainly work them together. I know women, though, that cannot take HRT because they're predisposed to cancer or they've had cancer or they're concerned about that. So, our product is a great alternative for women like that. I also know that HRT can be very expensive for women, depending on what their insurance levels are. It's unfortunate, right? Like I think erectile dysfunction drugs are like free, but when it comes to HRT, we have to pay for it, so
Yeah.
it can get expensive. Or vaginal estrogen creams, I think it can get very expensive.
Yeah.
So again, our device is a great alternative to that, or do it all. I'd say
Right.
go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
The
Yeah.
more you can do to maintain the health of your body, the tissue, everything, the muscles, God bless you.
I love that. And we always talk about choice. Like
Choice.
we want to bring people
Mhm.
onto our podcast to just like, who's talking about this stuff? Like,
Yeah.
let's just get it out there so that A, you're not alone, and B, you have choices, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colette, can I ask a clarifying question too, out of curiosity, but just to make sure our listeners understand as well. With the VFit, it helps your tissue in the vaginal wall. Does it help with anything external? Does it help with relax and repair the vestibule? Talk to me
Yeah,
about
so
that.
depending on where the light is amplified, right? So if
Okay.
it's internal, it's going to address the internal tissue, although we strategically place the light at the introitus because we know that's the most important area to treat when we're talking about vaginal laxity. It's the introitus as opposed to, deep inside the
Yeah.
vaginal canal. You don't need to treat that. That expands and contracts as to accommodate for intercourse. So we want to treat the introitus. Now, having said that, we designed a second device that is used specifically externally, and it's called NeoHeat. It's the same technology, but it's applied, it looks like a pad, and you wear it in your underwear for same amount of time, 10 minutes. And that was specifically designed and cleared by the FDA for the treatment of the perineum tissue
Hmm.
after the trauma that occurs with childbirth. So if you think about it, you tear, that tearing causes pain, it causes nerve damage, it causes all sorts of trauma. And so this red light therapy accelerates the healing process of that vulva perineum tissue after after you've had that trauma occur.
You used a word I didn't know. Introitus?
The opening of your vaginal canal.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Maybe I'm the only one that doesn't know.
Yeah,
what
no,
word
thank you
that-
for that. Again, I said I try to be real, common terminology, but I get surrounded by these doctors and we're talking introitus and, all these, atrophy and dyspareunia and like, what is that? It's
Yeah,
painless.
and that's why we're doing what we're doing, right? To
Absolutely.
raise awareness so that those words are not foreign for anyone.
Exactly.
Colette, I feel like we're going to have you back on another episode. There is so much to talk about here. There's so much to talk about. Other things that you do, you advocate as well for social media.
Oh,
And
yes.
I know that that's a hot topic. So we're going to have you back because our
Oh,
listeners
please,
need
because
to.
that one could get me going for a good hour. The
Oh.
inequalities of these social platforms that allow men's health and men's health products to be talked about and promoted versus women's health products. Because, oh my goodness, saying the word vagina is apparently pornographic.
Yeah.
Or menopause. Oh, that's bad. We can't say the word menopause. And yet we could talk about penises and erectile dysfunction and hard, what, all day
Yeah.
long, but we can't say the word vagina. And we've gone as far up the chain to the FCC, or FTC, federal, one of the Fs. FCC, I don't know, one of them.
That up, yeah.
We've even gotten Hillary Clinton and Patty Murray, the senator, involved in advocating for us because it's time we women have equal, across the board, but, we should be able to talk about our body the same way men talk about their body.
Yeah, it's part of the awareness piece. We don't know what we don't know. And if we can't get it out on the internet, then how do we know? So we'll definitely have you back for another episode. And if you want to pop any links, throw them at us to put in the show notes for that. Let us know.
Yes.
But before we end our show with you today, we usually do a rapid fire. So we're going to rapid fire with you. And why don't I start since I'm right here anyway, Kim? Hot showers or relaxing baths?
Oh, relaxing baths every single day.
Does the Joylux product waterproof?
No.
Oh, that's a good
That's
question.
another self-care moment.
That's good. Home cooked meals or dining out?
Dining out. I am not a cook.
That seems to be the popular answer.
That is the popular answer today, which I love. How about Netflix or YouTube?
Oh, 100% Netflix. YouTube, I
No-brainer.
can't stand. Netflix almost every night.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. It just
Well,
kind of takes you away.
our final question that we ask of all guests, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, hands down, don't give up because no matter what you do, someone will be there telling you you're not good enough. It will never work. 100 reasons why you're going to fail, but you believe in yourself and you keep doing what you know is right because eventually the rest of the world will catch on.
Love it.
And you are proof of that. So thank you for all that you do for everyone out there with a
Thank you.
vagina. So
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about it because it takes a village. We all have to lean into the conversation to normalize it, to, destigmatize vaginal health. Because if we help improve one woman's life, the world will be better. And it may take us one at a time to get there, but we will get there.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we believe that too. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
listeners, that is a wrap. So until next time, go find joy in the journey.
Thanks, Colette, for joining us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
See you
you.
soon.